championship a couple of years ago by beating Oregon. But who is that team in Eugene these days, and what have they done with Oregon? Less than 2 years ago, and now instead Oregon is riding a 4-game losing streak, the latest humiliation coming at the hands of Washington, and the greatest punishment that the Ducks inflicted on Washington indirectly was when Husky quarterback Jake Browning had to do 500 push-ups for taunting a Duck on his way to the end zone. They spent a lot of time going to the end zone. They dropped 70 on them, 70-21 the final, and that the latest evidence that this Duck dynasty is certainly on hiatus, if not outright canceled.
This could not have gotten off to a worse start for Oregon. Evidence worst season since 04.
We're 6 games into the season and not where anyone wants to be. Everyone's disappointed. I'm disappointed. The coaches are disappointed. The student athletes are disappointed. And there's a lot of frustration.
There are guys at this point in the season that aren't doing necessarily everything that we want them to do. In this situation, it's just that much more frustrating.
That's some guys on the team that are busting their tails and winning. And it seems like we have other guys on the team that don't even care if we win or lose. How big a part of the team do you think it is? 30%, 40% of the team. They can always bought in.
Obviously, those guys are competitive guys that are very frustrated. Those are things that we need to address in-house.
Right now, in the moment, we're 6 games in. There still is an opportunity to turn this a little bit and start to see some positive results. And we've got to continue to support the coaches, support the student athletes, and see what we can make of this season.
Oregon hasn't seen difficulties like this in quite some time. The 4-game losing streak and a couple of those games in blowout fashion. Of course, they had all the 2-point conversion issue. They might have knocked off Nebraska. New defensive coordinator Brady Hoke. They've given up 35 offensive touchdowns to the opposing teams. They've just been like a sieve, letting teams run wild down the field. So 126 in defensive efficiency. That's out of 128. Not very good. Oregon not necessarily known for defense, but in the past, under Nick Aliotti, they certainly have had some better defenses than what we've seen so far. Tom Rinaldi joins us down top. You were in Eugene. You spent some time at a conversation with Mark Helfrich. Things are as out of sorts as it seems?
Certainly tough times, Reese. You can't deny that. But for context, in the last 7 seasons, consider, without a natural recruiting base, without a vast tradition of winning, without a huge stadium, Oregon played for the national championship in the last game of its season twice. That kind of success creates expectation year in, year out, without exception. Those expectations so far this season obviously have not been met by anybody's accounting, including the head coach.
That's the game. Nebraska. It's intercepted. Washington State. They got Oregon on their heels. Washington 70 and Oregon 21. Talk about the wind being taken out of your sails.
The motto of this program is win the day. How many days do you feel like you've been winning lately? Wow, the majority. I would say the majority, and the biggest thing again to get over the top is those little tiny moments, those little tiny details. There's 1,000 of them, and if you get 997 of them correct, it's the 3 that you don't get right that decide the game. For people who might not see that nuance and hear you say we're winning the majority of the days and only judge it through the record. Well, it's reality. I mean, that's sports. It's perfect or you're an idiot. After the loss to Washington, one of your veteran linemen, Cam Hunt, was quoted as saying 30 to 40% of players on the team don't even care if we win or lose. Yeah, I mean, that's emotion. Number 1, it's not true. And then number 2, if it is true, that's not the time and the place to discuss it. Within our program is where we take care of that kind of stuff. What's your level of frustration? My level of frustration is varied. Dealing with the outside noise and dealing with all that stuff, I'll take that all day long and be the force field or the shield or whatever for our guys, as long as they take accountability inside our doors and inside our gates. Extremely frustrated about the lack of progress in some areas, absolutely. We have to be in solution mode. We have to be a positive, force in this deal because there's plenty of negativity. If we go back to the 4 teams in the first college football playoff, Alabama, Ohio State, Florida State, and Oregon, how would you compare where you are now to where they are?
Well, Alabama and Ohio State obviously have had fantastic seasons. I know Florida State early had a couple losses. You have to fight the negative momentum. I think it's comical that Mark D'Antonio is all of a sudden a bad football coach, or Charlie Strong can't coach defense, or Brian Kelly can't coach offense. It's just such a narrow view, and there's a lot of ball left to play.
What do you think the narrow view is of Mark Helfrich right now?
Oh, the narrow view is we've lost 4 in a row. That's not good enough by anybody's measure.
What is the identity of the program right now?
In progress. We've got so much newness, which that's where you get on that borderline of excuse and reality. We've got 8 guys on defense that have never started before, 6 guys on offense that have never started before, and then a bunch of those guys out for the year, and that's reality.
How do you think you should be judged?
The players 50 years from now, what our players are doing 50 years from now.
In that judgment, Mark, what role should win and loss play?
Oh, I very much agree with was it Bill Parcells that you are what your record says you are, and that's right now that's not very good. We're not the worst team in the history of the world. We aren't the dumbest coaches in the history of the world. We're not where we want to be, where anybody wants us to be. We know how to solve it, and we will.
There was a time when warp speed, spread offense, and endless uniform combinations and those sorts of things gave Oregon an edge. It seems like so many programs, Reese, now have caught up to a degree in that edge. A season ago, for context, Oregon 3-3. Under Helfrich, they won their next 6 in a row before losing the bowl game in a spectacular collapse to TCU. After that sit-down, Reese, Helfrich told me, if you show up when everything's great, you have to show up now. We'll see how Oregon shows up here through the balance of the season.
And Tom, Helfrich, a stand-up guy for sitting down for that interview with you. But, you look at this, and there's such a call to make a change. Oregon is not the kind of place where you can just roll through coaches and think the next guy is going to do better. It's not built that way. You have to understand the culture and finding that culture. Tom said something important. A lot of people have snazzy uniforms and great facilities now. But I think Oregon's missing something they've had a little trouble finding since the longtime defensive coordinator Nick Aliotti left. They had an edge. They had an attitude on defense. You don't see that now. They've got to establish some kind of identity.
Well, I think the facts are the facts, and I think that's what Mark just talked about with Tom Rinaldi. The facts are Oregon for maybe 5 or 6 year span when Chip Kelly was there with Nick Aliotti. That combination and evaluating high school football talent, not 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star. They found guys that fit with what they were doing on both sides of the ball, and they were the team with the new uniforms that played faster than everybody else, that had freaky athletes on both sides of the ball. When you look at those teams and those players, and you look at the team now, we can talk about injuries and we can talk about playing a lot of young players, but even when they're healthy, I don't see the same caliber of athlete that we saw there for, like I said, 5 or 6 years.
Let me tell you, Kurt, there's an old saying in coaches: you can lose games, but you can't lose your players.
Right.
Once you lose your players, you're finished as a coach.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure Mark's lost his players or not, but he's got the rest of the season, 6 games, to salvage it. If not, it's over for him. I'm afraid to tell you, it's now or never for Mark.
Yeah, well, Coach, when you look at the Ducks offense, they need a dynamic quarterback to make that offense go. It's just how it is. A lot of teams, they don't necessarily have to have a dynamic quarterback, but the Oregon Ducks, they need one. They haven't been able to find one. And then the defense, they don't play with an edge. They don't play with any heart. I mean, it just seems like they're out there going through the motions. And I think when you look at what Mark Helfrich brings to the team, he doesn't bring that energy that you would expect. He doesn't bring anything to me that speaks of urgency. It's just like they're just out there going through the motions.
I get it. He's mild-mannered. I mean, he very much is. And you might not like his interviews, especially doesn't have as much swagger as Chip Kelly. I keep going back to the fact that 2 years ago they were playing for a national title. Last year they could have won 11 games. Their quarterback got hurt. In fairness, I think they would have won 11 games if he doesn't. So it is a bad year, and they're shifting from a 4-3 to a 3-4, or from a 3-4 to a 4-3, and they're struggling with Brady Hope for sure. But does that mean Mark Helfrich deserves to be fired? And that's what it sounds like you hear now all over the place. And this is a team, again, that played for a championship 2 years ago, and they could have won 11 games last year.
But I think that if you're a decision maker and you're evaluating the program, how much of Marcus Mariota's playmaking ability mask some potential deficiencies down the road. And I'm a huge fan of Mark Helfrich. I think he's a great coach, but the guy he's replacing,
But you're not going to find that guy ever again.
But I'm just magic. They had a saying in the student section about him. There was seriously.
I know.
There was something about the whole program that kind of didn't really give a whatever about anybody, and a chip on their shoulder is kind of how they recruited and how they played. I'm just saying, from afar, you don't feel that. You don't sense that same kind of...
I just don't, but that's Chip Kelly, and he's one of the best there is. So unless you get him again...
Well, you got to find...
Who's that guy?
I mean, find a young guy. You could go find a guy like Houston's coach.
I think
Helfrich can be mild-mannered, but you got to have a guy on your staff
that gets after him.
Exactly.
They've had continuity there, and it's a unique place. I don't think you can shuffle coaches there. You got to find a guy that understands Oregon. Helfrich does. They've got to reestablish that identity a little bit. And don't forget all this Marcus Mariota talk. Oregon doesn't get Marcus Mariota without Mark Helfrich, who found him and who taught Chip Kelly into putting the offense on. Just that's a mark in his favor. Oregon State, by the way, maybe this Civil War is not going to be so great at the end of the year. What about the weather in Utah for the Utah game today in Corvallis? 100% chance of rain, 50-mile-an-hour winds for former Wisconsin.